वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचानूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णो वन्दे जगद्गुरुं श्रीकृष्णो वन्दे जगद्गुरुम् ॐ श्री परमात्मने नमः। श्रीमद्भगवद् गीता अथ पञ्चदशोऽध्यायः। Purushottama Yoga. Pranams from Dr. R.J. Kalpana. Welcome to the study of the Bhagavad Gita. In this session, we will look at chapter 15 of the Bhagavad Gita and study the Slokas 1 to 20. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Urdhvamulamadasyakam Ashvatham Prahuravyayam Chandausi yasya parnani Yastau Veda Savedavet. Shri Bhagavan said, he who knows the Ashwatha tree, which is said to be imperishable, with its roots in the primeval being, whose trunk is represented by Brahma, and whose leaves are the Vedas, is a knower of the Vedas. In this shloka, Shri Krishna talks about an upside down tree, Urdhvamulaha, a tree which has its roots facing upwards towards the sky and whose branches are spread all around below. Now, what is the traditional way that nature creates trees? The roots are very firmly grounded on earth, and the trunk rises out of the earth, and the branches and the leaves are all facing upwards towards the sky. Now there is a very deep secret in this. Let us look at this. The tree is sustained by the energy it receives from earth. So as long as the tree is trapped in this world of matter, in a material dimension, it has to receive its sustenance from the earth. It is firmly rooted in earth. And so as long as the soul remains in the material dimension, as long as the soul is not yet liberated and is still trapped by the senses and functions in a material dimension of matter, the soul derives all its sustenance from the earth point. Now, for heartfulness practitioners of meditation, please note that here the earth point is point 1 in the heart region. So as long as we are trapped by the senses, by our sense objects of perception, we remain and in the material dimension, and we receive our sustenance from point 1, the earth point. But as we travel from the heart region to the cosmic region, invertendo takes place. And when invertendo takes place, the upper becomes the lower becomes the upper. Thereby, the roots of the tree faces upwards in the sky, urdhvamulaha, and the leaves all face downwards towards the heart region. So in the cosmic region, once the soul gets liberated, the sustenance, the energy that the soul receives is no longer from the material plane, but from the cosmic source. This is the deep invertendo that is there in all spiritual literature, that we withdraw from the world of senses so a higher power can take over and guide us further. As long as we remain trapped in this material world, there is no chance of a liberation. So in this shloka, Ashwatha tree is first mentioned in Kathopanishad. How did matter arise from one consciousness? What nourishes and what sustains it? What is this relationship between the creator and the created? We will look at these answers in the next shloka. Adashchordvam prasruta tasya shakha guna pravritta vishaya pravalaha adashcha mulanyanusantatani karma anubandhini manushya loke. Fed by the three gunas and having sense objects for their tender leaves, the branches of the aforesaid tree Ashwatha, in the shape of the different orders of creation, extend both downwards and upwards, and its roots, which bind the soul according to its actions in the human body, are spread in all regions, higher as well as lower. So Krishna in Shloka 2 reiterates the same concept, adding different layers of meaning to it, because here we are looking at the nature of the unmanifested reality, the manifested divinity, and what lies beyond the absolute. Babuji once said, "The end of religion is the beginning of spirituality. The end of spirituality is the beginning of reality. The end of reality is real bliss. When that too is gone, we have reached the destination." That is the highest mark, almost inexpressible in words. So, in this shloka, Krishna is talking about how the branches are spread both higher in the higher celestial regions and also in the lower evolutionary scale and the devolutionary processes. And what is it sustained by? It is sustained by our gunas, sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic gunas. It is sustained and nourished by our tendencies. The buds of these trees are the sense objects waiting for a chance to blossom. The downward roots are the actions that create our samskaras, and the upward root is that which is anchored in absolute. This is that invertendo concept that we all have a little difficulty in comprehending. Understand the simplicity and the beauty of this shloka, in that as long as we remain trapped by our senses, we are constantly nourished by our senses, and therefore the roots face downwards. It's only when we detach ourselves from our senses we are able to function in a material dimension without undue attachment to sense objects. Then there is a chance at liberation, and that is when the higher powers take over. That is when we get constant guidance from the celestial entities. The roots then face upwards because no longer are we a member of a material dimension. We too become a celestial entity. We too stand a chance of becoming a celestial entity. And we derive sustenance with our roots facing upwards, directly from the divine, from the absolute, which nourishes us and helps us in our spiritual evolution. Shloka 3. न रूपमस्येह ततोपलभ्यते नान्तो न चादिर्न च सम्प्रतिष्ठा अश्वत्थमेनं सुविरूढमूलम् असङ्गशस्त्रेण दृढेन चित्वा. The nature of this tree of creation does not mature, turn out what it is represented to be, for it has neither a beginning nor an end, nor even stability. Therefore, felling this Ashwatha tree, which is most firmly rooted in the senses, with the formidable acts of dispassion. So this Ashwatha tree, this doesn't have a reality of its own. It's a mere representation of what is and what can be. Its upside down description reflects the unmanifested. Its right side up reflects the manifested life, and the only way to liberate ourselves is to cut it down with the axe of detachment. So when the consciousness is withdrawn from the world of the senses, its play of perception, thoughts and emotions must of a necessity stop. And when that happens, then the soul gets liberated. Shloka 4. Tataf padantat parimargitavyen yasmin gatana nivartanti bhuyaha tameva chadyam purusham prapadye yatah pravrittif prasruta purani. Thereafter, a man should diligently seek for that supreme state, God, having attained to which they return no more to this world, and having fully resolved that he stands dedicated to that primeval being from whom the flow of this beginningless creation has progressed, he should dwell and meditate on him. Here, Krishna tells us what further steps should be taken after one has felled the tree of mundane existence with the axe of dispassion. So in Shloka 4, Krishna suggests to us that we need to withdraw from this world of multiple experiences, a spectrum of emotions, and lead a life of detachment. Seek the Absolute, from which there is no return to this world of matter once again. Seek to attain that primeval being from which the flow of creation itself began. Shloka 5. Nirmana moha jita sangha dosha adhyatma nitya vinivritta kamaha dvandvair vimukta sukha dukkha sanyir gacchantyamuda padamavyayantat. Those wise men who are free from pride and delusion, who have conquered the evil of attachment, who are in eternal union with God, whose cravings have altogether ceased, and who are completely immune from all pairs of opposites, going by the names of pleasure and pain, reach that supreme immortal state. Sri Krishna here points out the qualities of those who succeed in realizing the divine by taking refuge in the divine, that primeval being, and they can attain the same state of balanced equanimity, or that supreme immortal state which is beyond the world of dualities. And what are the qualities? Free from pride and delusion, misunderstandings and ego, resistance to attachments, ever dwelling in the divine within the human body. And this detachment that Krishna talks about constantly throughout the Gita is easily accomplished by the simple act of constant remembrance of the Eternal One. If every thought, word and deed is done in the memory of the constant divine, then we invest every act of ours, every thought of ours, essentially with that divine power. It becomes that much more easier to then free ourselves from the world of dualities. It becomes that much more simpler to detach ourselves from the opposites that plague us our entire life: sorrow and joy, pleasures and pain. Shloka 6. न तद्भासयते सूर्यो न शशाङ्को न पावकः यद्गत्वा न निवर्तन्ते तद्धाम paramam mama. Neither the sun nor the moon nor even fire can illume that supreme self-effulgent state, attaining to which they never return to this world. That is my supreme abode. And here Krishna then describes the nature of that supreme abode, that celestial dimension that we all long to go to. It is that light that illumes the material world. It is that light of consciousness. But it is that light that can never be compared to, nor can be defined by the light emanating from objects in the material dimension. And therefore he says, the sun, the moon, the fire cannot illume that supreme self-effulgent state. The sun, the moon, the fire are mere insignificant dimensions of light, whereas the light of the divine is self-effulgent. If we can look at the sun and understand that the light of the sun comes from the divine, we can get a glimpse of our understanding of how effulgent the divine light would be. And it is that abode that is free from Maya, from the world of illusion that we are so familiar with. It is where the sun does not shine, the winds does not blow, where the moon does not even exist, where there are no stars and no fire, where there is neither birth nor death. It is that supreme state, supremely blissful, eternal, and ever blessed. Shloka 7. Mamaivansho jivaloke jivabhutas sanatanaha manashashtani indriyani prakrutistani karshati. The eternal Jivatma in this body is a particle of my own being, and it is that alone which draws around itself the mind and the five senses which rest in Prakriti. the Jivatma that rests, that dwells in a human body as the soul, as the causal being, as the Antaryamin, is but a particle of that primeval being that has no beginning and no end. And when that primeval particle arrived first in this world of matter, it suddenly realized the concept of I am. It separated itself from that source, from the absolute being, and arrived into this world of Maya. It looked around itself and came to the conclusion that I am. And with that faintest trace of the ego, it drew around itself the mind, because it started to think. It drew around itself the five senses, because they are the tendencies of the nature. They are the tendencies of Prakriti, the world the Jivatma found itself in. And then the layers of the subtle body was formed. Then the layers of the gross body began to take shape. Understand the secret of creation, which Krishna reveals to us here in this shloka. And it may be asked here, when, how, and for what does this causal body or this Jivatma draw to itself the mind and the five senses? And what are the five senses referred to above? And we will look for an answer in the following shloka 8. Shariren yadvapnoti yachapyutkramati shvaraha gruhitvaitani sanyati vayurgandhani vashayat. Even as the wind wafts scents from their seeds, so too the Jivatma, which is the controller of the body, taking the mind and the senses from the body which it leaves behind, forthwith migrates to the body which it acquires. So giving the example of the wind that carries with it the fragrance of whatever it encounters on its way. If it is blowing across a flower fields, it carries with it the fragrance of the flowers. If it is blowing across fruit orchards, it carries with it the scents and the fragrance of the fruits. Similarly, the soul, which is the primary controller of the body, taking the mind and the senses from the body which it leaves behind, migrates to the body which it acquires. So this causal body, the Antaryamin, that is the purest particle, unadulterated particle of the Supreme Absolute Being, which separated at the time of creation from the Absolute and found itself trapped trapped in this world of matter, then consequently went on to acquire subtle bodies, went on to acquire a gross body. So now, when it is time to leave the gross body, it once again carries within itself the subtle bodies with its samskaras, a little suitcase of impressions, of memories, of a million lifetimes, probably. And with that, it once again migrates to another body, because as long as our suitcase of samskaras remain, that time we keep arriving back to earth, birth after birth after birth, lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. We keep having to come, we keep getting an opportunity to empty our suitcase so we can travel light to the celestial regions. As long as we have our little suitcase of attachments, of emotions, of memories, of impressions that we carry, the samskaras, as long as samskaras remain, we remain trapped in this world of matter. When Karna was lying wounded and bleeding and struggling for breath in the Kurukshetra war, Krishna came to him in the guise of a Brahmin and said, I heard you're famed for your charity, Dhanya Virya Surya Karna. I have come seeking alms. And Karna laughs and says, I'm in the midst of a battlefield and I'm struggling for my own life here. What can I give you? What do I have to give you? And the Brahmin smiles and says, you still have all those good samskaras that you carry within, all those blessings that you have received from numerous people, all the good acts that you have done that has given you a little suitcase of good samskaras. Why don't you give that to me? And Karna smiles and says, take. And once he releases those samskaras, he merges with Krishna, he merges with the absolute divine being. Even our good samskaras keep us tied to this world of matter. Even our good deeds keep us tied. But it is only the bad deeds that brings us to mind the pain and the sorrow. We rarely attribute our good fortune to the good samskaras, but they too play a part in keeping us tied to this material dimension. Shloka 9. Shotrain chakshushaspashanain cha rasanam granameva cha adhisthaya manaschayam vishayanupasevate. It is while dwelling in the senses of hearing, sight, touch, taste and smell, as well as in the mind, that this Jivatma enjoys the objects of senses. So the soul, which is neither the doer of actions nor the experience of senses, and yet, because of its presence in the gross body, it is a witness to the tendencies, it is a witness to the objects of the senses. The Kathopanishad states, it is the self joined with the mind, intellect and senses that is termed as the enjoyer of the wise. So therefore, the causal body, being a witness, as long as it's dwelling within a human dimension in this material world, it is subject to the senses and to the objects of sense. Shloka 10. Utkramantam stitam vapi bhunjanam va gunanvitam vimudhananupashyanti pashyanti jnanachakshushaha. The ignorant know not the soul departing from or dwelling in the body or enjoying the objects of senses, even when it is connected with the three gunas. Only those endowed with the eye of wisdom are able to realize it. So Krishna here is saying that not everybody is aware of the knowledge of the soul. For the ignorant does not understand the concept of the soul and does not understand the concept of the witness, because they are so deeply enmeshed in the world of matter. Only those who are endowed with wisdom, only those who have been blessed with the intelligence, know the real character of the soul, understand how it is connected to the three gunas, the three modes of Prakriti, Sattvic, Rajasic and Tamasic. Understand that the nature of the soul is entirely beyond the material dimension, entirely beyond the world of Prakriti. It is pure, unattached, and contains the divine consciousness within itself. Shloka 11. Yatanto yoginaschainam pasyantyatmanyavasthitam yatanto pyakrutatmano nainam pasyantyachetasaha. Striving yogis too are able to realize this self enshrined in their heart. The ignorant, however, whose heart has not been purified, know not the self in spite of their best endeavors. It is those sadhakas, those abhyasis, those participants on the path of the yoga who are able to realize and understand the signs of the soul, understand, perceive the presence of the divine in their hearts. But that ignorant people who have not undergone any purificatory rituals, whose heart is not pure, because it is still subject to sense pleasures, will never be able to understand the signs of the soul, will never be able to perceive the soul within themselves in spite of their best endeavors. And so here Krishna talks about how important it is for us to detach ourselves from the world of the senses, and how important it is to purify ourselves, understand the motivations of our samskaras, understand the conditioning of our tendencies, purify, because it is only in the fire of purification that the truth can be perceived. Shloka 12. Yadadityagatan tejo jagad bhasayate kilam yachandramasi yachagno tat tejo vidimamakam. The light in the sun that illumes the entire solar world, and that which shines in the moon, and that too which shines in the fire, know that light to be mine. So in the earlier shlokas, in shloka 7, Krishna declares that the soul is but an eternal particle of the absolute divine. And here in shloka 12, he is reinforcing that statement by saying that that effulgence of the sun that illumes the solar world, that shines in the moon, in the fire, it is that light which is mine and mine alone. So the light that we perceive and we see through the world of our senses in this material dimension is the light that is sustained by the divine light, which can only be perceived by yogis. But we get a glimpse of that illumination. And we begin to understand a little of what it means to be self-effulgent. Shloka 13. Gama vishya cha bhutani dharayam yahamojasa pushnami chaushadis sarvas somo bhutva rasatmakaha. And permeating the soul, it is I who support all creatures by my vital power, and becoming the nectarine moon, I nourish all plants. And therefore, Krishna declares here that it is the divine power which pervades the whole universe, which sustains every little sentient and insentient in this earth that we perceive, in this material dimension of the sun, the moon, the planets, the galaxies that we see. It is part of God's own energy or power. It is that essence which we can see. Shloka 14. Aham Vaishvanaro Bhutva Pranani Dehamashritah Pranapana Samayukta Pachamyannan Chaturvidam. Taking the form of fire lodged in the body of all creatures and united with prana, exhalation, and apana, inhalation, it is I who consume the four kinds of food. Krishna here talks about the fire that is lodged in the body of all creatures. Jataragni, that we call it, the Upanishad and the Vedas refer to it as, it is that divine presence which has to be quenched first, which is offered food first within the body, and united with prana and apana vayus, the inhalation and exhalation breaths. It is the divine who consumes the four types of food. So it is that gastric fire that helps in the digestion, which is the presence of the divine. It is the apana and prana, the life force that keeps the human body alive, the inhalation and the exhalation of breaths. And essentially, it is the four types of food. So here, Krishna is talking about illuminating, sustaining, nourishing, digesting as all different aspects of his own primeval absolute energy. The four types of food, according to Ayurveda, is one, bhakshya, the solid food that requires to be masticated and chewed before it can be swallowed. Bhoja, food that can be directly swallowed without any chewing or mastication. Leya, that which is licked with the tongue. And koshya, that which is sucked. So what the divine is seeking to convey in this shloka is that the illuminating power in the fire is as much a part of the divine effulgence as the heating power. The digesting and the appetizing power, the inhalation and the exhalation of the breath is all part of divine potency. Shloka 15. Sarvasya chaham hridi sannivishto mathas smritirjnanamapohanancha vedescha sarverahameva vedyo vedanta krudveda videva chaham. It is I who remain seated in the heart of all creatures as the inner controller of all, and it is I who am the source of memory, knowledge, and the ratiocinative faculty. Again, I am the only object worth knowing through the Vedas. I alone am the father of Vedanta and the knower of the Vedas too. So here Krishna in Shloka 15 says that although it is his absolute power that is prevalent throughout this world of matter. But the heart is the special seat of divine manifestation. And that is why Krishna declares more than once that he is enshrined in the hearts of all. Look into your hearts and you shall find me. In chapter 13 and in chapter 18. For Krishna is directly perceived in the heart of those whose mind is pure, whose hearts are pure. And that is why, if you note in the earlier shloka, we discussed the purification of the heart. In shloka 11, Krishna says, the ignorant whose heart has not been purified know not this divine in spite of their best efforts. He again uses the word heart. He does not use any other organ. He could have very well have said the brains, the mind, but he used the word heart. So Krishna here says that if you have to see him, if we have to perceive the divine anywhere, he is best found in the heart of all creatures as the inner controller, as the causal body that is ever present, ever silent, ever witness of everything, all actions, all reactions. And it is he who is the source of memory, knowledge, and rationalizing ability of the mind and the intellect. And the divine is the only object worth knowing through the Vedas. Why? Because the Absolute is the father of the Vedanta and the knower of the Vedas too. And that is why here he says, Vedavid. In the first shloka, if you recollect, it starts with Urdhva Mulaha and ends with Vedasa Vedavid. The knower of the Vedas is known as Vedavid. Shloka 16. Dvavimo purushau loke sharaschakshara evacha sharas sarvani bhutani kutastokshara uchyate. The perishable and the imperishable too. These are the two kinds of Purushas in this world. Of these, the bodies of all beings are spoken of as the perishable, while the Jivatma or the embodied soul is called imperishable. So now we come to one of the spiritual secrets of this chapter, where he talks about that which can perish and that which cannot. The gross body belongs to the world of matter, which is perishable, and the soul or the causal body that is present within this human body is the imperishable. Now, Krishna in this shloka mentions Shara and Akshara. By speaking of Shara and Akshara, the divine is seeking to convey that the two are entirely different from each other. We looked at this in great detail in chapter 8. The perishable and the imperishable, that which is beyond decay and destruction, and that which is subject to decay and destruction. Now, in Shloka 17, Krishna goes on to discuss the essential character of the Supreme Person of the Absolute. Uttamah Purushastvanyah Paramatmedyudahritah Yo Lokatrayamavishya Bhibartavyaya Ishvaraha. The Supreme Person is yet other than these, who, having entered all the three worlds, upholds and maintains all, and has been spoken of as the imperishable Lord and the Supreme Spirit. Here Krishna is once again introducing a deep spiritual truth by talking about the manifested divinity, the unmanifested reality, and the absolute that is beyond both. It is that all-pervasive energy that upholds the universe, that maintains all living beings. It is that absolute that interpenetrates the 7 worlds above Jambudvipa, planet Earth, and the 7 worlds below Jambudvipa, planet Earth. The Shvetaswatara Upanishad contains the definition of Kshara, Akshara, and Ishvara. In the first canto, it says Kshara is the same as Prakriti, while the enjoyer or the self is the Akshara, and the one deity that rules over both Prakriti and Atma, Kshara and Akshara, is Ishvara, or as is mentioned in this chapter, Purushottama. Shloka 18. Yasmatyaksharamatittoham aksharaadapi chotamaha atosmi loke vede cha pratitah Purushottamaha. Since I am wholly beyond the perishable world of matter of Kshetra, and I am superior even to the imperishable soul, hence I am known as Purushottama in the world as well as in the Vedas. Now he is finally explaining the concept of the Absolute. For here he says, I am beyond the perishable world of matter. I am beyond this world of Prakriti, of Kshetra. I am superior even to the imperishable soul. That soul that is a particle of the divine. Krishna says that I am even more superior to that soul, to that manifested divinity, to that imperishable nature of the unmanifested reality. Hence, I am known as Purushottama in the world as well as in the Vedas. I am that which is beyond the manifested divinity, beyond the unmanifested reality. And it is that secret that we need to understand in this chapter of Purushottama Yoga. For heartfulness meditation practices, in the book Truth Eternal by Ramchandra of Fatehgad, there is a hint that is there which says go beyond the unmanifested reality. And what is it? It is this Purushottama, this absolute. Shloka 19. Yo mamevam sammudho janati purushottamam sasarvavid bhajati mam sarvabhavena bharata. Arjuna, the wise man who thus realizes me as the Supreme Person, knowing all, he constantly worships me, the all-pervading Lord, with his whole being. So here Krishna says, go beyond Shara and Akshara Purushas, because Krishna is beyond Akshara and Shara. He is beyond Purusha and Prakriti, beyond Kshetra and Kshetrajna, beyond what can be manifested and what can be unmanifested. He is beyond everything. So go directly to that source, perceive that truth, and recognize that presence, that divine vibration that is there everywhere, and dedicate your life, dedicate every thought, word and deed with that divine knowledge. And one who does that is essentially on the path towards the divine, who has added one more step on his spiritual journey. Shloka 20. Iti guryatamam shastram idamuktam maya nagha etad bhudva buddhiman syat kruta krutyascha bharata. Arjuna, this most esoteric teaching has thus been imparted by me. Grasping it in essence, man becomes wise, and his mission in life is accomplished. Iti guryatamam shastram, this most esoteric teaching, this most secretive knowledge has now been imparted by me, Arjuna. Grasp it in its essence, understand the divine vibration, perceive it, understand the essence of that divine that pervades the entire universe, that sets the course of stars and planets and universes, and that sets the course of our own tiny little lives. And knowing this, man becomes wise. and this lifetime has finally culminated in achieving the goal of merger with the Divine. Om Tatsaditi Srimad Bhagavad Gita So Upanishadsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Shri Krishna Arjuna Samvade Purushottama Yogo Nama Panchadashodhyayaha. Thus in the Upanishad sung by the Lord, the science of Brahma, the scripture of yoga, the dialogue between Shri Krishna and Arjuna ends the 15th chapter titled Purushottama Yoga, the yoga of the Supreme Person. Om Yogesham Satchidanandam Vasudevam Rajapriyam Dharma Samstapakam Viram Krishna Vande Jagat Gurum. Shri Krishna Vande Jagat Gurum. Om Shri Krishna Arpanamastu.